Hey, sleepyheads. Let me ask you something. Have you ever stood in a place so quiet that it almost felt like the world had already ended? That's where we are now. April 28th, 1945. Berlin is a broken city. But beneath its ruins, a different world waits. Concrete, silent, breathless. And in it, the last gasps of a man who once thought he could rule the world. But we don't begin with noise. We begin with silence. The concrete corridor is narrow. Pale lights hum above, buzzing faintly. Dust floats in the air like ash that forgot how to fall. The ceilings sweat. The walls are thick, thicker than any castle. And still, they don't feel safe. Our observer walks slowly. Not a soldier, not a prisoner, just someone whose name history has long forgotten. He's here to document, to move, to see without being seen. And today, he sees everything. In one room, a radio murmurs static. No orders, just white noise now. In another, a woman pours soup from a metal pot. It's thin, pale, barely food. She doesn't taste it. No one eats anymore. They chew, they swallow, they continue. In the Führerbunker, they don't speak of surrender. They speak of maps. Still, Adolf Hitler sits at a worn table, one hand flat, one hand trembling, pointing to red lines that no longer matter. His eyes do not blink much. His voice is slower now, measured, almost detached from what it's saying. To him, victory is just delayed. To everyone else, it's gone. But no one says it aloud. The observer steps into a narrow hallway. He hears typewriters. Paper shuffles. A door clicks open, and nothing happens behind it. This place, this bunker, was built to protect the leader of a crumbling dream. And now, it feels like a tomb. One where everyone is still breathing. For now. He walks past a mirror. Cracked. Hung too low. Someone, a young secretary, maybe left a lipstick mark on the edge of the glass. Just a smear. But even it looks like it's fading. Above ground, bombs fall in the distance. Like thunder without lightning. Every once in a while, dust rains gently from the ceiling. Not much. Just enough to remind everyone that death is listening. In the command room, the map is a painting, a fantasy. Hitler leans close to it, fingers tracing borders that don't exist anymore. He speaks of reinforcements. He speaks of Steiner, a general who hasn't arrived, who won't arrive, who maybe doesn't even exist anymore. But no one corrects him. The bunker is a place without honesty now. Only ritual. Only the performance of power. Later, the observer walks past Eva Braun's quarters. He hears soft music. Old. Cheerful. From a record player spinning slowly in the dark, she hums to herself. Dances alone in a narrow circle of light. A dress with pearls. No war in her movements. Just denial. Even her shadows pretend everything's fine. In a corner of the hallway, someone has scrawled a word in chalk. Ende. The end. No one erases it. No one wants to be seen doing that. April 28th. The hours pass without names. The people pass without eye contact. The observer moves gently, like mist. He listens without stepping too close. In the corridor near the briefing room, a man stands frozen, a general tie crooked, mouth tight. He's been standing for 40 minutes, not speaking, not blinking, just waiting to be summoned. But the voice inside the door? It's not calling anymore. Inside that room, Hitler is hunched, slouched forward, as if gravity found him suddenly. The map still lies on the table. The red arrows are gone. They've been smudged off, not by an aide, by his own trembling hand. He whispers names aloud, cities, divisions, officers. But now, he repeats them, as if memory is fighting to keep its own shape. Across the hall, Goebbels paces. His children are somewhere upstairs, being watched. He hasn't seen them today. He grips a paper in his hand. News of another betrayal, another city taken, another promise broken. He says nothing, not because he has nothing to say, but because he knows no one will listen anymore. The radio crackles, a faint voice in German, a broadcast, then silence. Then, from another room, the sound of someone sobbing softly, muffled in their sleeves. It isn't rage anymore. It isn't despair. It's fatigue. The kind that only comes when you finally understand the end isn't coming, because it's already here. The observer finds a note, left on a desk near the entrance to Hitler's quarters. A single line. The Reich is dead, but no one will say it out loud. No one signed it. No one had to. He steps into the kitchen. Empty plates stacked. No laughter. No voices. A guard comes in, takes a tin cup of water, leaves without a word. Even thirst feels mechanical now. In the narrow hallway outside the bedrooms, a secretary brushes her hair in the dark. She whispers something, a prayer maybe, or a goodbye she hasn't sent yet. Her hands shake, but her eyes are dry. She's past crying. Later, the observer watches Eva again. She's no longer dancing. She's sewing, a loose thread on Hitler's coat. Her fingers move slowly. She hums again, not music, just noise. The kind you make so you don't have to hear yourself think. And now something changes. A knock on the door. An aide enters Hitler's room. He speaks in a whisper. The Führer doesn't respond. Just looks up as if waking from an old dream. Then back down, to the paper, to the lines, to the fantasy. The observer looks up at the ceiling. Dust trickles again. A rumble far above. The city is still falling. Brick by brick, hour by hour. But here, underground, they pretend the floor isn't shaking. And still, the clocks tick. Because even in the last hours of a failed empire, time doesn't care who loses. April 28th. Night has no real meaning underground. But it feels darker now. The lights flicker more often. The rooms feel colder. The observer's footsteps are slower. Not from fear, from exhaustion. Even silence gets heavy. After a while, he stops near the radio room. Two operators argue in hushed tones. One wants to transmit. The other has stopped believing it matters. What good are signals when no one's left to answer? A door slams. Hard. Sharp. An officer storms past the hallway. A whisper follows. He's gone mad. They don't say who. They don't have to. Inside the main chamber, Hitler speaks. To no one in particular. To everyone. To the air. He rants about betrayal. About cowards. About people who failed him. The observer listens from the shadows. The voice is thin now. Still sharp, but fraying at the edges. Each sentence sounds like it might be the last. Each word fights not to crumble in his mouth. He stares at a photograph on the table. Old. From better times, maybe. It no longer matters. He tells the room, the world will remember me. Not you, not them. Me. And no one replies. Because no one wants to be remembered for this. The observer walks to the side quarters. He finds a man sitting in the dark. A pistol on the table. A glass of something clear beside it. The man speaks softly. None of us will be heroes. Just shadows. Then silence. He doesn't ask the observer to stay. He doesn't need to. Back in the hallway, someone plays the same song Eva was humming. Over and over. The same 4 bars. It's not music anymore. It's a loop. Like memory. Stuck. A letter is being written. Typed with stiff fingers. It will be Hitler's last will and political testament. But the observer doesn't read it, because it doesn't matter what it says. What matters is that even here, on the edge of defeat, he believes words can control the ending. Near midnight, a phone rings. No one answers. It rings 7 times, stops, and never rings again. Eva walks past the corridor. Her steps are soft, but sure. She's made peace with something. Or maybe she's simply surrendered to it. The observer looks at the walls. They seem closer now, as if the air itself is folding in. He hears a soldier praying, not loud, just enough for anyone to hear. But down here, the only thing listening is time. April 28th. But it could be any day. Time has lost meaning here. The clocks tick, but no one listens, because they already know how this ends. In the corridor outside the Führerbunker's private quarters, a light flickers, then dies. No one replaces it. There are no more orders for repairs, no more routines, only rituals of goodbye, some spoken, most not. The observer passes an aide, packing away medals into a suitcase. Not with care, not to preserve, just to clear the table. It's no longer about honor, only escape. Hitler is still in his study. The door is closed, but his voice leaks through. He's dictating details about his dog, Blondie. He wants it killed before the enemy can reach her. That's how much fear has warped him. Even mercy now comes in bullets. The observer stands in the corner, watching officers shuffle papers that no longer matter. A map lies torn on the floor. A wine bottle rolls in slow circles. No one picks it up. Then comes the announcement. The marriage is to happen tonight. Eva Braun, the longtime companion, she will become his wife. Even as the ceiling crumbles, even as the world ends. A priest is summoned. A few witnesses gather. The ceremony is short. Too short. 2 trembling hands. 1 trembling vow. But no celebration. Only the sound of boots walking away. The observer writes in his own journal, the most powerful man in Europe is now the loneliest one underground. Later, a simple dinner is served. Cold meat, potatoes, wine. They eat in near silence. Someone jokes. It dies in the air before reaching anyone's smile. In another room, a soldier holds a pistol, but stares at a photograph. A family, a picnic, sunlight, as if trying to remember a time when the world was warm. Midnight approaches, and with it, a strange stillness. Not calm, just hollow. The kind of silence that means everything has been said, every decision already made. Eva walks past the observer. She's wearing light perfume, something floral. She smiles faintly. Not because she's happy, but because she knows there's nothing else left to feel. Back in his room, Hitler places the cyanide capsule on the table. Beside it, a pistol. 2 choices. He will take both, because even now, he wants to control the ending. The observer writes again. There will be no speeches, no final orders, only a locked door and silence. Next, we enter April 29th, where the walls grow thinner, and death waits just beyond the door. April 29th, 1945. Berlin is burning above. The Soviets are only blocks away, and inside this bunker, you can hear the absence of communication. Radios still hum. Telephones still sit on desks. But the voices, they've stopped calling, because the world has moved on, and no one tells a crumbling throne when it's time to fall. Our observer, not a soldier, not a believer, just a witness to history's unraveling, walks past a communications room. Dust on the switches. Static on the lines. Once, these wires stretched across a continent. Now, they stretch into nothing. Outside, the Reich is dissolving. Entire divisions have vanished. Generals captured. Allies turned. Ministries silent. But here, in this sealed concrete cage, Hitler still believes words have weight. He calls for his secretary. He begins to dictate. A promotion. To a general who's likely already dead. Another medal. To be sent to a city that no longer exists. He speaks names like spells. Ranks like rituals. But magic has left this place. On his desk, a worn-out map of Berlin. Red pins, blue lines. All lies now. The streets it shows no longer belong to him. They belong to fire. To tanks. To the sound of boots that don't march for him anymore. The observer notes the look in Hitler's eyes. Still sharp. Still certain. But something else too. Frayed. He speaks with the rhythm of authority. But each word is a note in a requiem, not a command. He orders the destruction of bridges, of railways, of cities he claims betrayed him. His rage is not strategic. It's poetic, like a man burning his own house just to say he wasn't wrong. In the next room, a few loyal aides type up the promotions. They use official seals. They follow procedure, not because they believe, but because it's all they know. Because when the world ends slowly, people cling to rituals to avoid looking at the collapse. The observer walks past a hallway lined with portraits, smiling officers, marching parades, flags unfurled. Now, those frames hang crooked, the glass cracked, a symbol of a kingdom, still pretending to stand, even as the roof sags. Hitler signs his name. The ink smudges slightly. He doesn't notice. He's too busy reciting another speech, to be broadcast on a frequency that no one is tuning into. He still believes the voice matters. But the empire is deaf now. And so the bunker continues its play. Scripts read. Actors dying. An audience long gone. The observer writes quietly. This is no longer leadership. It's ritual for a crown made of paper. In the bunker, morning and night no longer exist. Time is a guess. Sunlight is memory. The only light comes from flickering bulbs overhead. And the only certainty is that it's ending soon. In this stage of shadows, Hitler paces his private quarters. He reviews military reports that are days old, already meaningless. He revises speeches as if an empire will rise again to hear them. To the observer, it looks like theater, but not grand, not tragic, just tired. A play with no audience, a king improvising in ruins. He's still speaking of victory, of vengeance, of a final blow that will turn the tide. But outside, Soviet artillery is already shaking the street signs. His own officers exchange glances, tight-lipped, pale-eyed. They say nothing. What else is there to say? They've seen the maps. They know there are no troops, no reinforcements. The Luftwaffe is silent. The army is shattered. The Allies have crossed rivers. They once swore would never fall. Still, Hitler speaks as if destiny is merely delayed. He reads aloud proclamations, promoting teenage boys to generals, thanking divisions that no longer exist. The observer notices he doesn't speak with people anymore. He speaks at them, as if reality might bend if the performance continues. They gather in the briefing room, a space once filled with stiff uniforms and crisp salutes. Now, there are only tired men, trembling hands, and the quiet sound of wet boots. From the bunker leaks. Hitler steps forward, begins to outline a counteroffensive. He names towns the Soviets already hold, units that have been captured, and the men around him nod, not because they believe, but because they are too far in to do anything else. Our observer watches him point to the wall map, his hand trembling slightly, not from fear, from age, exhaustion, or perhaps the first flickers of recognition that this story is no longer his to write. And yet, he still signs the orders, still speaks of betrayal, still blames generals, Jews, civilians, anyone but himself. Even as his Reich bleeds into the soil, he clutches the myth, the paper crown. Back in his room, he reviews his will, dictates it in a single sitting. He demands that his legacy be recorded, his version of truth, typed on thin sheets of war-weary paper. The observer sees this, not as confession, but as control. A man writing the final act, so no one else can rewrite it. But even paper burns, and even signatures fade. Outside, the walls tremble again. Another shell, another reminder that the war doesn't care for speeches anymore. And yet, inside this bunker, the play continues. The uniforms are still pressed, the flags still hang, the voice still echoes. But the kingdom is already ash. The bunker has grown quieter. Above, Berlin screams. Explosions turn streets to skeletons. Families flee. Fires bloom in what used to be homes. And beneath it all, he plans a wedding. Yes, a wedding. Adolf Hitler, Führer of a crumbling Reich, summons a civil officer to his quarters. Beside him stands Eva Braun, his longtime companion, now solemn-eyed, dressed plainly, her hands folded over her waist. The observer is summoned too, not to participate, only to witness, to record the strange theater of a marriage that arrives only when the world is collapsing. Eva smiles, but her smile is fragile. She's barely spoken all day. She's been with him since her teens, a shadow at the edge of history. Now, for a few quiet minutes, she will be written in. The vows are brief. There are no guests, no music, just concrete walls, flickering lamps, and the sound of ash falling outside like snow. The civil officer reads from a standard book. No poetry, no grandeur, just legality, the kind used to marry bakers, farmers, and now, dictators on the edge of the abyss. The observer watches Hitler sign the certificate, his name still strong, bold, practiced. Then Eva signs hers. She glances at him, and for a moment, the bunker feels like a coffin, with flowers in it. There is a brief reception. Champagne, rationed sweets, quiet congratulations from the inner circle. Goebbels raises a glass. His wife nods beside him, silent. They toast, not to the future, but to the end. Hitler smiles occasionally. Eva stays close. But there's no joy, only the relief of finality, the kind you feel when you know there's nothing left to wait for. The observer notes this scene. A wedding surrounded by war, a union not of hearts, but of symbols. It is not a celebration. It is a seal on the final chapter. Later, they retreat to Hitler's quarters. The new bride and groom. He speaks to her in whispers. She nods. Neither of them cry. They are not in love with each other. They are in love with the myth they've created. And that myth dies tomorrow. Outside the room, soldiers clean their weapons. Valets pack small bags. The smell of fuel lingers in hallways, not for escape, but for what comes next. And yet, the performance continues. Another speech is drafted. Another list is signed. A few medals handed out, as if the Reich still has a weight to throw. The observer scribbles one note. The walls still echo with his voice, but the voice now echoes only back to itself. Late night, April 29th, 1945. The bunker is quiet again, quieter than usual. Because something has shifted. in the tone, in the faces, in the air. No more plans. No more tomorrow. Just the sound of boots, pens, and breath. The observer walks the lower halls. The lights flicker slightly, powered by a generator that hums like a dying insect. He notes, no one talks about Berlin anymore. No one mentions the war. They talk only in hushed voices, about arrangements. One of Hitler's valets is disposing of files, burning them, tearing them. He doesn't look up. He doesn't flinch. He just keeps moving, because this is the final duty, to erase what cannot be defended. In the map room, the table still holds Europe, lines and markers and tiny flags, as if they still mean something. But the generals are gone. The armies are gone. Only paper armies remain. Hitler retreats deeper into his quarters, Eva with him, like a ghost clinging to smoke. He speaks little now. Just nods, just writes. At his desk, he drafts his last will and political testament, dictated in cold, clipped German, recorded with urgency. The observer notes how strange it is to see a man narrating history's judgment as if he could still shape it. In the will, he names his successor, Goebbels, a man with no army to lead, only words, and for his dog, Blondie, a capsule of poison. Even the loyal must die with him. There's no madness in his tone now, no fury, just grim precision. He is trying to control the end, as he once tried to control the beginning, but power has already left the room. The observer walks through the narrow corridors. Each room is an echo, each face tight, pale, sunken. There's a waiting now, like the pause before a ship sinks completely, and Hitler is preparing for it. At 4 a.m., he meets briefly with staff, thanks them, shakes hands. No tears, no speeches, just a strange, unsettling calm. He tells them he will not leave, that this is where it ends. The observer watches their faces, some filled with loyalty, others with disbelief, none with hope. Back in his quarters, Hitler sits with Eva. They talk softly. Then, silence. They don't say goodbye. Not with words. The observer writes, it felt like watching two shadows agree to vanish. In a small side room, near the stairs, the last items are prepared. A pistol, a capsule, a blanket, and beyond that room, nothing. This is how the paper crown ends, not with a roar, not with fire, but with a door closed gently, and a silence that will never be broken. Above ground, Berlin is falling. Children cry. Rubble smokes. The Reichstag burns. Below ground, a man clings to ritual, even as history prepares to sweep it all away. And still, the bunker hums. Low, final, forgotten. The war above has become thunder. Explosions shake plaster from the ceiling. The lights flicker again. But here, deep beneath Berlin's broken streets, the bunker pretends time is still in order. The observer walks the corridor. His footsteps join those of others. A secretary with tear-lined eyes. A cook who hasn't smiled in days. A guard who hasn't spoken in hours. He writes in his notebook, "We are all actors now, trapped in a play whose final act is silence." In the war room, the maps still hang, but the lines are fading. The ink is smudged. The commanders? Gone. The chairs? Empty. Yet every morning, new imaginary plans are drawn on chalkboards. Retreats, defenses, reinforcements. None of them real. And still, Hitler walks in. Frail now. Pale. His left hand trembles against his belt. He peers at the maps. Points at lines that no longer exist. Mumbles to no one in particular about Steiner's counterattack. Steiner. a general who has no forces left to command. The room remains quiet, because no one dares say what they know. The war is over, but the man in charge hasn't accepted it. In the hallway, a stenographer clutches a draft speech, dictated for an army that's already scattered to the wind. She knows it means nothing. Still, she types, because in this place, truth has no uniform. Only obedience does. The observer finds a quiet corner. He watches Hitler pass. He notes. He walks like a man wearing armor made of paper, still pretending the rust is gold. The day continues. More meals served gray soup, stale bread. More false messages sent. Radios crackle with silence. One soldier whispers to another, he still thinks Berlin will hold. And the other replies, he still thinks history will obey. No one says it aloud, but the ghosts have already moved in. The bunker isn't a command center anymore. It's a mausoleum, waiting for its final breath. The air in the bunker thickens after noon. Not with smoke, not with dust, but with the weight of things unsaid. The observer stands in the doorway of the map room. Inside, the last threads of pure unravel. Hitler sits at a long wooden table. A single lamp burns over his hunched form. Papers in front of him. Some are military orders, others personal letters. Never sent. His appearance is worse now. Skin sallow, eyes sunken, a twitch in his left cheek that never stops. He speaks aloud. To no one in particular. They will hold the Oder line. Steiner will flank them from the north. The traitors will be punished. But the room knows. Steiner isn't coming. The Oder line has already collapsed, and there's no one left to punish but the dust. Aides nod. Secretaries write his words. A general stands at attention, eyes unfocused. They all know this is theater. But no one interrupts the actor. Outside the room, the observer speaks softly with a young officer. Do you believe he knows? He must, the officer says, but belief is not the same as acceptance. The bunker is still lit, but it feels like dusk has already fallen. People walk slowly. Meals are barely touched. Guards lower their voices. Even footsteps are quieter. It's as if the bunker itself has taken on a single wish. Don't wake him from the lie. In another hallway, a junior clerk sharpens pencils that won't be used. He does it not for purpose, but because it keeps his hands from shaking. Near the radio room, a signal technician turns a knob, trying to catch something, anything. But the German frequencies are static. Allies advance. Berlin burns. The Reich is crumbling. Still, Hitler dictates another order, promotes a colonel to a command that no longer exists. He signs the paper, hands it off, and someone files it into a drawer that might as well be a grave. Later, in the corridor, the observer writes in his book, the walls hold no truth here, only echoes of a kingdom built on silence. A door closes. Another officer leaves, quietly, quickly. He won't return. And still, in the heart of it all, the man with trembling hands and ruined dreams pretends the throne hasn't turned to ash beneath him. The lights flicker again. No one notices anymore. Because by now, the silence has swallowed the bunker whole. The observer walks slowly. His steps echo like memories through long, gray corridors. He passes the typist's room. The keys aren't clicking anymore. The last speech was finished hours ago. No one's asked for another. He passes the mess hall. A few sit, hunched over bowls. The soup is cold. No one says a word. A spoon clinks once, and even that sound feels like it doesn't belong. It's not fear anymore. It's something worse. Resignation. In the hallway near the Führer's quarters, a maid walks by with a tray. Half a sandwich, 2 aspirin, chamomile tea. She leaves it on a side table, not knocking. just moving past, like a ghost avoiding another ghost. Inside his room, Hitler stares at a wall. His back is to the door. A dog lies curled at his feet. He speaks aloud again, but this time it's different. His voice is slower, lower, and it shakes. They betrayed me. All of them. Even the ones I trusted. The observer doesn't enter. He just listens. Because what's happening in that room isn't leadership. It's unraveling. From behind the cracked door, you can hear the sound of pacing. Heavy breaths. Then a cough. Then silence. Long, stretching silence. A knock at the door. Aide enters. Whispers that another general is gone. Another unit surrendered. Another radio tower lost. Hitler doesn't look up. He simply waves a shaking hand. We fight on. But even he doesn't believe it. The observer scribbles. There is no oxygen here. Only memory and the sound of nothing left. In the chapel room, empty now. A chair lies tipped over. Candles burned out. No one prays anymore. Perhaps they've run out of words. A guard walks by. Uniform crisp, eyes hollow. He nods to the observer. A silent acknowledgement. We're still here. But for what? By 10 p.m., the walls groan. Soviet artillery is within blocks now. Even the deepest levels of the bunker tremble. Above ground, Berlin is ash and fire. But below, a strange calm settles in. Not peace, but something like its ghost. And deep in the center, Hitler paces. His footsteps soft, like leaves falling. He whispers, "If Germany falls, it deserved to." The words hang in the air, then vanish. No one replies. Because there is nothing left to say. The bunker doesn't sleep anymore. Not truly. It just drifts, in and out of light and dark, of silence, and whispers. Our observer walks past the mess quarters. A few officers sit at the long wooden table. Empty plates, full ashtrays. One tries to pour wine into a glass. The bottle is empty. No one speaks. They were supposed to eat together tonight. A farewell dinner, someone had suggested. But what's there to toast? The Reich is in ruins. The city above burns, and the future has already walked away. A faint piano note rings out, from somewhere down the hall. Not a melody, just a key being pressed, held, then nothing. In the Führer's chamber, Eva Braun sits beside a suitcase. She's quiet, poised, wearing a blue dress. She smiles when Hitler enters, as if this were just another evening, as if none of it were real. The observer lingers in the hallway. He doesn't want to go in, and yet he can't leave. Inside, voices are low, private, a soft conversation, not of strategy or escape, but of what comes next. Hitler gives orders about what to burn, what to seal, who should leave, and who must stay. We die here, he says, as we lived inside history. Down the hall, a cook prepares a last meal. Simple food. No wine, no candles, just boiled eggs. Mashed potatoes. No one eats much of it. Midnight comes. And with it, the final ritual. The couple retreats to their room. The door shuts gently. And this time, it stays shut. The observer leans against the wall. His notebook is open, but he doesn't write. What would you even write when time itself seems to pause? The hallway is empty. The guards are still. The air smells faintly of dust and iron and memory. Somewhere, a dog barks, then whimpers, then silence again. The observer thinks, we are no longer alive down here, only waiting to be remembered. He stands, moves quietly down the corridor, past closed doors, past fading portraits, past history, collapsing in on itself. He doesn't know what the morning will bring, only that when it comes, something will end. He leaves his final note for the night. The bunker has no clocks, but we all know what time it is. April 29th, 1945. The bunker is dim. The last echoes of ceremony have died away. Our observer returns to his corner of silence, a place where paper maps no longer show borders, and calendars have stopped counting. Outside, the Red Army is closing in. Inside, the walls are getting colder, not physically, but spiritually. The bunker isn't just a shelter anymore. It's a coffin of command. Hitler's hands tremble violently now. He uses both to lift a teacup, to sign his name. Every movement is slow, heavy, deliberate. He still insists on formalities on reports, uniforms, protocols. But the air is too thin now. There's no empire left to control. 10 p.m. He summons a few aides. His eyes scan each face, not with warmth, but calculation. He gives final instructions. Burn everything. Protect the dogs. Make sure my body is never displayed. He speaks as if he's organizing a weekend retreat, not his own disappearance. Our observer watches as documents are passed hand to hand. Loyalty is tested one last time, but loyalty now means pretending. Pretending this still matters. Pretending the Third Reich is anything but ash in slow motion. Hitler retreats to a side room with Eva Braun. They murmur to each other softly. No one dares to ask what they're saying, because here, secrets are safer than truth. The hallway is quiet. Only the sound of boots moving, hesitantly. A few soldiers' boys really linger near the stairwells. Do they know this is the end? Maybe. Maybe not. Someone tries the door at the far end of the bunker. It doesn't open. There's no handle. Just concrete and finality. In the observer's mind, that's what this is now. A world behind a door without a handle. No exit. No return. No future. The lights flicker. The corridors are cold. And in a room that once echoed with commands, there is now only the hum of stale air. Our observer moves through these halls. Each footstep is slow, hesitant, like walking through the ribs of a corpse. This place is no longer alive. Guards stand like statues, but their eyes are lost. They stare forward, unfocused. One of them hasn't spoken in hours. Another whispers prayers under his breath. Not for victory, but for sleep. In the map room, the walls are littered with pins, markers of armies that no longer exist. The Reich is a ghost. And at the heart of it, a man sits still. Hitler's desk is cluttered with old reports, unopened telegrams, and crumpled pages of what were once grand strategies. Now, nothing but ink bleeding into paper. He signs documents still. Wills. Orders. Last words dressed in official tone. His signature once bold, sharp, now trembles. Outside, the Soviet shells are closer than ever. But down here, it's eerily quiet. Too quiet. As if the world has forgotten the man hiding beneath it. He stands once, slowly, and walks toward a door, not to escape, but to choose. He doesn't speak much anymore, only nods, only stares. He asks one final thing of his aides: burn the documents, burn everything, the past, the shame, the evidence of dreams now drowned. And then, to one, he says, gently, I will not be taken in a cage. Our observer sees the moment. Not grand, not cinematic, just inevitable. A man with no escape, and a door without a handle. The world once watched him roar. Now, it barely whispers his name. Sleep, sleepyhead. Because in the next chamber, history won't shout anymore. It will fall, like ash, quiet, and final. Morning drags on. April 30th, 1945. There's something eerie about time in this place. It doesn't pass. It waits. The bunker feels suspended, not in safety, but in delay. Like a room where everyone has already heard the final note, but the echo hasn't died yet. Our observer moves through the halls again. It's quieter than before, even quieter than death. Because death, at least, ends something. This is just, "Hey, sleepyhead, you've made it through the storm." Now we lie among the wreckage, and we listen. Because when the fire ends, what's left behind isn't silence. It's the soft rustle of history trying to rebuild itself. And in those ashes are lessons carved in smoke. Let's walk through them together. Let's go to May first. 1945 Berlin, above the bunker. The first light of May crept through shattered windows, and it did not bring peace. It brought questions. Smoke still rose from the Reich Chancellery. The garden where 2 bodies had burned was now a scar in the dirt. The air reeked of fuel, brick dust, and finality. But the man who had ruled with iron, who'd sent millions to die, was gone. And Berlin? Berlin was broken. Soviet flags began to appear atop buildings. Soldiers moved from room to room, marking the fall of the capital with cold precision. Inside the Führerbunker, the rooms were still. Personal items remained, untouched. A teacup, a uniform jacket, a half-written note. No speeches, no farewell ceremonies, just debris. And our observer's eyes? They move slowly now, our quiet witness. Everywhere they look, they see a kingdom of ghosts. Men who once barked orders, now whisper in corners. Some shave, others write final letters. One man stands in front of a cracked mirror, trying to adjust his tie. As if the old world still expects him to look neat. As if a nation hasn't already collapsed beneath his feet. Another is burning documents, his hands trembling, his eyes vacant. They don't speak of Hitler anymore. They speak of the man, the body, the end. The reverence is gone. All that remains is a strange quietness, a mourning not for a person, but for the illusion they built around him. Radio broadcasts confirm it. Hitler is dead. But around the world, there is hesitation. Is it true? Is it a lie? Is it a trick? Some refuse to believe it. Others think it's a coward's escape. But the Allies? They tighten their grip. British, American, and Soviet forces converge on what's left of Berlin. And the bunker, once a nerve center, becomes a curiosity, a symbol, a dark museum of failure. In the rubble above, stars begin to appear through smoke. Berlin sleeps, but not peacefully. Families shelter in ruins. Fires burn without purpose. The Reich, the so-called 1,000-year rule, lasted only 12, and now it is ash. The observer looks up. Where once there were banners, now there is sky. Not freedom yet, but space. A breath. The first quiet breath after a scream, and the world begins again. Hey again, sleepyhead. Do you feel it? That eerie calm that settles in ruins. It's not peace. Not yet. But the screaming has stopped. And now, we face the echo. Tonight we walk through the aftermath, through the bones of what once claimed to be eternal. And we listen to what remains when the delusion ends. The surrender of Berlin came not with a flag, but with a white cloth tied to a stick. General Weidling, commanding the final defenders, was escorted through the destroyed city to negotiate surrender with the Soviets. And the Red Army? They moved like waves, through streets that no longer had names, through rooms where time had stopped. The once invincible Third Reich had collapsed into dust, papers, and disbelief. In the Führerbunker, only a few remained. AIDS, secretaries, men with titles that now meant nothing. Some tried to maintain protocol, as if dignity could outlive defeat. One man took down portraits. Another burned more files. A woman wept in a corner, holding a letter to no one. Our observer walked the hall and saw the final image of a delusion unraveling. Rooms once filled with declarations and rage were now just damp stone and forgotten whispers. Someone played a record. Classical, soft, out of place, but not unwelcome. On the surface, Soviet soldiers claimed each sector. They found food stores hidden behind false walls. They found maps with red lines that meant nothing anymore. They found children. Children in uniforms too big for their frames. Children who had believed a myth. And now, they simply sat on curbs, eyes blank, waiting for a tomorrow no one could describe. In London, newspapers struggled with headlines. Hitler dead unconfirmed. Berlin falls end of an era. In America, there were cheers, followed by questions. Did he really die? Or did he escape? Would there be a resurrection of terror? But deep down, most knew this was the end. The man who once stood on podiums, under banners and fire, was now a rumor beneath the earth. The observer, our quiet guide, steps one last time into Hitler's personal chamber. The walls are plain, the couch blood-stained, a table with one burned photograph. It's not a throne room, not a lair, just a room that swallowed too many lies. They step back, close the door, and feel the weight of it all press against their chest. Not because they mourn, but because they've witnessed how far a man's madness can stretch when no one says enough. Soviet units stormed the Führerbunker. Guns raised, breaths sharp, but there was no fight left inside. Only dust, ash, and silence. They found everything and nothing. Scattered documents, half-burnt books, a teacup on a desk, a bed never slept in. They took photos, measurements, even fragments of bone. It wasn't curiosity, it was proof. Because some lies don't end when the liar dies. Despite reports of Hitler's suicide, conspiracies spread. He escaped. He's in Argentina. There's a secret plane, a tunnel, a submarine. But inside the bunker, truth was plain and gray. The room smelled of smoke and metal. The couch still stained. The Soviets knew. But the world? It wasn't ready to believe that the greatest villain of the century had died in a whisper. Germany itself didn't collapse. It shattered. Cities reduced to skeletons. Families torn by silence. Children raised in craters of guilt and dust. What do you do when your flag means terror? When your anthem becomes silence? In the West, American and British troops worked to restore order. In the East, the Soviets pushed for control. But across every checkpoint, one truth echoed louder than any anthem. The nightmare was real, and now it was over. As the bunker grew quiet, the courts began to speak. Nuremberg, a trial not just of men but of memory, of proof, of justice. Not everyone fled to a bunker. Some fled to Switzerland, to Brazil, to hiding places inside old monasteries. But the world's watching now, and the survivors of that brutal chapter stood on witness stands, voices trembling but unbroken. The Soviets sealed the bunker. Later, it was covered, then buried. Later still, paved over. By the 1990s, you could stand in a parking lot and never know that beneath your feet lay the ruins of a lie. Berlin did not want a shrine. It wanted a future. But history always leaves its fingerprints. May 8th, 1945 was Victory in Europe Day. Crowds dance in London. Tears flow in Paris. Mothers exhale in Moscow. But in Germany, it's not celebration. It's surrender. Hollow buildings, food lines, children staring at soldiers who don't speak their language. The Reich, once promising 1,000 years, barely survived 12. Its emperor died in a basement. Its people, left to wonder what they had followed and what they had become. Goebbels, dead by poison, with his wife and 6 children. Himmler, captured, disguised, swallowed cyanide. Others fled, hid, were caught, or simply disappeared into the forests of fear. The inner circle aunts, drunk on ideology, now scattered like ashes on winds of consequence. The bunker's silence wasn't peace. It was punishment. The kind only the guilty understand. How do you rebuild when your national story was written in horror? Streets renamed, statues removed, symbols banned. But memory has no flag, no border. It seeps. Germany did not erase the past. It studied it, faced it, built museums not to honor, but to warn. Because forgetting is the first breath of repetition. There is no official grave, no monument, no mausoleum, only dust, fragments, a few dental records, deliberate, calculated, because the world agreed this story would not end with reverence. Not even a stone, only a whisper, never again. And even that must be said over and over. After April 30th, 1945, the bunker lay in eerie quiet. No more shouting, no more boots stomping corridors, just wet concrete, scratched doors, leftover meals never eaten. The Soviets arrived first. They searched the rooms, tore apart the furniture, dug up the garden. They wanted proof that he was gone, that the story was finished. But was it? See, when a leader falls, his voice can vanish overnight, but his words, they echo. And in the years that followed, those words crept underground. Some wore suits instead of uniforms. Some printed pamphlets in the dark. Some sat in pubs, whispering of what once was. They told themselves a lie, that the war was lost, but the belief was not. This is the room no one talks about, not made of stone, but of silence. Many who helped build the regime survived the war. Some were caught, put on trial, held accountable. But others? They faded into quiet towns, changed names, taught at schools, sat at dinner tables with secrets too sharp to swallow. They didn't wear swastikas anymore, but they remembered. They just didn't talk. And that's the danger, not in noise, but in unspoken memory. Some were just kids when the regime fell, raised in youth camps, taught to chant, to salute, to believe blindly. When the war ended, they were told, forget everything. But how do you forget your childhood? Some rebelled, shamed of what they once shouted. Others held on to the fragments. And some, very few, picked them up and tried to rebuild. Whispers, websites, symbols carved in alleyways. A toxic inheritance, passed down, not through genes, but through silence. After the war, the world came together in Nuremberg. Cameras rolled, judges gathered. Names, once feared, sat behind glass. They were asked questions, shown their crimes, told, you were part of this. Now answer for it. It was justice, but also a warning. The world said, never again. But as years passed, the echo chamber grew quiet. Louder things took its place, new wars, new leaders, new chaos. And the lesson began to blur. Some said, he didn't really die. He escaped. He'll return. Conspiracy, fantasy, fear dressed up as curiosity. It wasn't just denial of fact. It was denial of responsibility. Because if the monster escaped, then maybe we weren't part of what happened. Maybe it wasn't our silence, our obedience, our looking away that let it grow. But truth, it doesn't run away. It rots, if not faced. And in dark corners, that rot became rumor. By the 1950s and 60s, a strange thing began. Not open praise, not flags or marches, but coded language. Dog whistles. Phrases like tradition or purity, meant to poke at old wounds without naming them. And slowly, the echo chamber filled again. Not with speeches, but with silence that knew what it was hiding. In basements, in small groups, behind fake names, they gathered, not to remember history, but to rewrite it. Imagine now, our observer, older, wiser, scarred. They walk through modern streets, hearing echoes of old slogans in new voices. They see memes, comments online, symbols on walls that people pretend not to notice, and they whisper to themselves, "It's happening again, but differently." Because evil rarely repeats itself exactly. It evolves, adapts, and denial? It's its favorite disguise. After the war, historians wrote everything down. Every lie, every speech, every vote cast in fear. They printed it, bound it, filed it in libraries and schools. Not for decoration, but for defense. Because history, true history, is armor. But slowly, the books became background. Pages yellowed. Shelves became decoration. And now, ask yourself, when was the last time someone read them cover to cover? People began picking what to remember. They said, he was a great speaker. He built roads. He made the trains run on time. They skipped chapters, avoided paragraphs. They forgot the laws, the disappearances, the book burnings, the silence of entire towns where laughter never returned. They chose a version with all the horror edited out. But the truth, it doesn't go away just because you stop reading it. It waits. Some people didn't just forget. They rewrote. They made movies, memes, songs, stories. They joked about it, mocked the victims, turned a monster into a myth, as if by softening the memory, they could escape the guilt of it. But you can't cleanse evil by giving it a new font, and you can't protect yourself by pretending it was never real. Our observer, still awake, still remembering. They walk the dusty aisles of an old bookstore. They find a thin volume, spine cracked, its title long faded, but inside names, dates, testimonies. The truth in fragile ink. They read it aloud, not for others, but for themselves. Because remembering isn't just about history. It's about identity, about who we become when we refuse to forget. The day was April 30th, 1945. Outside, gunfire, screaming, a city collapsing into smoke. Inside, a door was closed and never opened again. Hitler, with trembling hands, sat beside his wife of one day, Eva Braun. She wore her best dress. He wore a black jacket. They said few words. They drank poison. He raised a gun, and history held its breath. The shots echoed for a moment, sharp and final. Then came footsteps, guards, loyalists. They wrapped the bodies, burned them in the garden above the bunker. Ashes carried by wind over the wreckage of Berlin. There were no last speeches, no fanfare. Just two lives ended in a place carved out of fear and delusion. The dictator who wanted to reshape the world was now a handful of smoke in a burning city. After the war, the bunker was filled with concrete, sealed, forgotten, built over, because some rooms hold things we dare not visit again. But beneath the layers of earth, if you could listen, you'd hear nothing. Not voices, not regrets, just stillness. And in that stillness, a warning. We end here, sleepyhead, not in rage, but reflection. The worst parts of history aren't just in bunkers. They live in neglect, in forgetting, in the stories we refuse to tell fully. This isn't just the story of a man who hid. It's the story of what happens when hate is given power, when truth is silenced, when fear becomes law. So tonight, you've done something brave. You listened, you stayed, you remembered, and as long as we do, as long as we speak of what must never return, then that room, the one no one talks about, stays locked, not with chains, but with choice. Hey, sleepyhead, you're still here, still listening, still breathing quietly in a world that once thundered with war. Tonight, you heard a story not of glory, but of caution. Not to glorify history, but to understand it, to feel its weight, so we never wear it again. Down in that bunker, beneath the broken bones of a dying empire, a man tried to command the world, one last time, and the world said no. It whispered with the wind. It roared with the bombs. It reminded us that power built on fear will always collapse under its own silence. You heard footsteps echoing in narrow halls. You heard lies repeated like lullabies. You heard the truth, hiding like a ghost. But now, let that ghost drift away. You've faced it, and that's enough. As your body sinks deeper into sleep, know that you're safe. You're not in that bunker. You're not in those pages. You are here, now, warm, aware, and becoming wiser with every breath. The world is full of stories, some terrifying, some tender, and you are the kind of person who listens, who learns, who dreams better dreams than history once lived. So tonight, close your eyes gently. Let the last sounds be soft ones. Let the darkness be healing. Let your sleep be peaceful. Not because the world is perfect, but because you carry light into it. Thank you for staying. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for dreaming a future worth waking into. Good night.